account per se. But the question I have is, it was $1.2 billion in terms of purchase price.
Right.
The company is spending about $200 million a year in terms of net income loss. And if you take that over 4 years, sort of sum it up as $2 billion, roughly as an investment into this vector that you were talking about. So I guess my question is why? You could be using, theoretically, Android sort of for free. You could be using Windows, and you've worked with Windows and other parts of PSG Group. So tell us a little bit about why the acquisition of Palm, and why did that make sense to spend that amount of money?
Well, I mean, from HP's perspective, I think we've been pretty public about this with regards to our interest is the fact that when you look at success in the marketplace, it's about those companies that can control the end-to-end experience. So it's the ability to not just be the hardware and using third-party software. It's about being able to control that entire experience stack. And so for us, it became a realization that if we wanted to win in the mobile phone space, we needed to, you get down to a build versus buy kind of analysis. But when you look at what Palm has done, particularly on WebOS, and the architecture and the forethought that Mitch and John and the team at Palm put into the design of WebOS, there's just nothing out there from the standpoint of a competitive offering that we think matches up to the capabilities that WebOS brings to the table. And so with HP, given our size, our scale, our ability to make an investment, keep in mind, Palm is not like a traditional investment for HP. I mean, it's not a EDS where you're bringing in cash flow and you're trying to get synergies from the standpoint of cost savings. That's not the case on the Palm acquisition. In fact, with Palm,
you're investing more.
We're investing more money in, so we're actually putting money in both into R&D and the marketing. John Rubenstein is staying in place. The organization under John stays as structured under John as it was before. John reports directly to Todd Bradley, who runs the PC division at HP. So it's really about getting all the benefits of HP plus our stability and our size and scale.
So for the developers that are in the room, and of course I think interested in the community, as you say, is very excited and rabid about HP's involvement in Palm, what can you talk to them about as relates to why they should stay excited about the platform? And if I'm an iPhone developer or an Android developer or a Java developer in the room, why should I start developing on HP, WebOS, if I'm using some of those other platforms today? Give us some sense of what they can look for.
Well, I mean, from a standpoint of the HP size and scale, keep in mind that HP, our products are currently sold through 88,000 retail outlets around the world.
88,000.
88,000 retail outlets. So we have the largest retail footprint of any consumer electronics company in the world. We're the #1 technology partner for all Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 wireless carriers around the world. So we already have all the relationships with those carrier operators from that perspective. And we've made it quite clear that our view for WebOS is not just about the phones. We have clearly stated that we will bring WebOS to alternative devices.
The Slate product announcement.
Slates, so we're not making a Slate announcement. We will make, we've stated clearly that we will have WebOS on a Slate device, and that we will also have WebOS on printers. So you start thinking about those kinds of device, the tens of millions, the hundreds of millions, the billion consumers every day using HP products.
Is there a public point of view around Flash versus HTML5 in that battle, or is that not?
We haven't made any new announcements along that with regards since the acquisition. Prior to the acquisition, Palm, as many of you know, has made announcements on their support with Flash and the work that they're doing with Adobe, but there's nothing new since. We're not saying anything new with regards to that. I mean, HP, we have a very long and strong relationship with Adobe.
So HP obviously has a long relationship with Microsoft, and the other part of the PSG group, the personal systems group that you're in, obviously continues to work with Microsoft.
Right.
And obviously, the other guys down the road in Mountain View, also Google, have a play in this space as well. How do you think that this acquisition and this new strategy will affect the relationships with a Microsoft or with a Google?
Well, I think you'd have to ask Microsoft their perspective, but I mean, we are the largest PC manufacturer in the world. If you look at it as a percentage of our revenue, it's by far the single dominant segment for us today is in the Windows platforms. We have a great relationship with Microsoft. We continue to work very, very strongly with them on future platforms. We see, Windows having its segments of the market, but when you get into the highly mobile phone segment of the market, we felt that we needed to have an approach that allowed us to control that end-to-end experience.
Well, Phil, you made a comment about earlier the relationship with the carriers and the retail outlets, and I know that you've had a very long experience in this industry. Those of us who have been around mobile for a while have a lot of scars, right? And you've been an operator, you've been at a PC manufacturer, now a OS player that is going to play in slates and in PCs and in phones. I'd love to hear your perspective on how what I call the power of the ecosystem has changed over time. It used to be that the carriers kind of controlled everything, and a lot of us talk about this trend called open mobile, and maybe the carriers don't have as much control. And then some people would say that it used to be the handset players like Nokia that had a lot of power in this industry. Now that's changed a lot. So give us a little bit of a forecast of what do you think the market structure is going to be in the next 3 to 5 years? Because I think the acquisition of Palm had to be part of that thinking, right? So I'm just curious how you would describe sort of who is the new gatekeeper, who has the greatest influence in terms of the structure of the industry.
Well, I think it's like any industry that goes through its shifts is you get the pendulum swings, and the swings go from one end to the other end. So you had the carrier control to handset controls to, so you kind of had that first happen. Carriers came out, they had dominant control. Then it kind of switched to the handset manufacturers like the Nokias of the world. So there was that little bit of a battle. So back to some markets there in the 90s that actually refused to carry Nokia phones to prove the point, right? Then it came back to being carrier controlled. Now you're back to almost 100, in certain segments with Apple and on iPhone and having, device control. Where the challenge for any market that's going through these kind of dynamics is the fact is you got to have a balanced ecosystem. All players in the ecosystem have to be able to get value for their contribution to the work. If it swings one way or the other, then you get an unbalance in the overall ecosystem. So for our view and one of the real attractions also for WebOS and the App Store environment on the WebOS is the fact that they've created a very open approach to the way the App Store. So not only can you post in the App Store, you can download direct from your individual website. They support RSS feeds for third-party app stores that get created. It's the ability to allow that ecosystem to be able to play. So it's not controlled 100% by the device guys, it's not controlled 100% by the carrier guys. Everybody's got to come to the table and realize that there's value that gets created, and then how do you evenly distribute to make sure everybody gets compensated appropriately for the value that they contribute to the ecosystem. If it swings one way or the other, you get that unbalance, and then it actually starts to stifle the ability to innovate.
So to try to put that in context, if iPhone is here in terms of being pretty vertically integrated, right? Very tightly bound, and as a result, there's a certain user experience you have. And if Android is here, where is WebOS HP? Is it going to be, quote, more open and liberalized than, say, an Android environment, or is it going to be over here kind of to the right, closer to sort of an iPhone?
I think if you look at WebOS today with things like the homebrew guys and gals that are out there that are just creating phenomenal innovations on top of WebOS. So I think you would probably swing that closer to kind of an Android with the ability to drive kind of that consistency in an architecture that we hope is we don't hope, we know is the easiest platform out there to create applications.